how to write scripts for synthetic monitoring. And we're really excited to have Phil Weber back, who is our Senior Technical Training Specialist at New Relic University. So thanks, Phil. Look forward to see what you have.
I'm one of three, actually. We have 3 Senior Technical Training Specialists. And there's no higher title on that team, so I don't know where I'm going to go next. Might have to be a manager. Oh, no. Okay, here's my title. Let's see, the lawyers wanted me to show you this, that we added you to our training account so that you can do the hands-on lab, but that means other people can log into that training account who have also been added and see your emails, so you can't sue us if they do anything. Be nice, be a good citizen, and don't spam your fellow attendee. Okay, so I don't really have slides other than an agenda. For the next 45 minutes, this is sort of a hybrid. So earlier today I did a talk, and then we had lunch, and then we did a workshop. This is a twerk shop, I guess you could say. We're combining the two. I'm going to talk and you're going to practice at the same time. So New Relic Synthetics allows you to write a script using Node, JavaScript, to automate a browser to simulate what your users would do. So if you have an e-commerce application, for example, you might want to write a script that opens the home page, browses the product catalog, adds some items to the cart, and checks out. So today, we're going to practice writing a script that performs some common tasks like visiting a URL, ensuring that the actions happen sequentially on the page, because JavaScript is asynchronous, especially the Selenium WebDriver library that we use. So you have to do a little bit of work to make sure that one action doesn't start until the previous one has completed. So we'll talk about how to do that. How to locate and interact with items on the page. How do you find that text box that they should type in, and then the button that you want them to click. So we'll talk about the various methods that you can use to do that. And then finally, I can only cover so much in 45 minutes, so I'll tell you where you can find more information later on. I'll give you my home phone number, so no, not really. Okay. So let's see. I'm trying to recognize faces. Some of you I recognize were here for the workshop a couple hours ago, so you've already been added to the training account. Is there anyone who was not here for the browser and synthetics troubleshooting lab 2 hours ago? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so a few. We will need to make sure, if you want to write a synthetic script, that you have access to the training account. So you may probably have been added to the account already because we added everyone who had registered by 10:30 this morning. If that is the case, you should be able to log in as you normally would. If you had a New Relic account previously, you can log into New Relic, rpm.newrelic.com with your normal username and password, and then switch up here in the upper right corner. Let me go to a different account. So if you log in, this upper right corner will show your face, not mine, and the name of your account. And then you can click here and say switch account, and the one you want is NRU training. So try that. Log in. Yeah, that worked. Good. If you did not already have a New Relic account, then you should have received an email from us at about 11:30 this morning saying you've been added to the NRU training account. Click here to get started. So you can click the button in the email. And if neither of those applies to you, then raise your hand and we will come around and help you get logged in. Okay, we got one. Let's see. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry. Feedback. Try just changing that number to 1038287. Okay. You probably use SSO, I'm guessing. You log into New Relic. Okay, so that's the issue. I'm going to need a non-ClickBank email address. Do you have like a Gmail? Can you write it down? And same thing? Yeah. If you give me your non-corporate email, if you're not able to log in, I can add that. Okay, I'll be right back. I'm going to keep. Hey, Raf, would you mind, these two gentlemen on the left side are writing down their non-work emails, and if you bring those up when they're done, that would help. Okay. So let's see, if you are brand new with synthetics and you don't know anything about it, that's fine, but let me give you a quick tour. So New Relic Synthetics, as I've mentioned, is great for proactively monitoring your site, right? The ideal customer experience is that you find out about a problem before your customer ever sees it. Most of our tools tend to be reactive. We will tell you that your app is slow. We will tell you that errors have happened. We give you the information that you need to troubleshoot, and that's valuable. But it'd be even better if you had some way to keep an eye on your site and notice that there's a problem before it impacts users. And that's kind of the goal of synthetics, is it's a robot. We call it it's a synthetic user instead of a real user. That's where the name comes from. So it's an automated browser, and you can control what the browser does, how it interacts with your site, to monitor the things that are important to you. Thank you very much. Okay. So the first two types of monitors here are very simple. The ping monitor doesn't even load a browser. It's just an HTTP client object, and it just sends a request, a GET request to a URL, and it'll let you know if your web server isn't answering, times out or whatever. And we actually don't charge for that. So the ping monitors, you can do up to 50 sites. Just hit the server, make sure it's alive, and get notified if it fails. Simple browser goes a step further. It's still hitting a single URL, but now it's actually spinning up a real browser on a real operating system, loading the full page, all of the resources on the page. So not only will it tell you if your site is down, but it will also measure the performance. How long did the page take to load? What were the slowest resources? So our previous two sessions that I've done earlier today showed how you can use that data to help improve performance. Today we're going to focus on option 3, the scripted browser. So that launches a browser and then just says, here I am, what do you want me to do? And you write a script that tells it which URL to visit, and it's a complete Node.js programming environment. I like to emphasize that because some people get in the mindset that it's just only what I can interact with in the UI, right? I see a text box, I'm gonna select it, I'm gonna put some text, I'm gonna hit a button, but you can do so much more, and I'll talk about that as we go, but I'll just wait till we get there. But it's very powerful. So if we're gonna do a scripted browser monitor, the first thing we need is to give our monitor a name, and if you're following along, feel free to create your own as we go here. I'll add you two in just a second. So I'm gonna call that, you might wanna put your name in here just so you know that it's yours. Phil's scripted browser. Okay, after the name, in real life, you would say, I want to select as many of these geographical locations as I care about. You could do all of them. There's an all checkbox up here. But for today, let's limit this because my account has 100,000. Let's see, when's it going to show up? Oh, I have to pick at least one here. Here we go. I have 100,000 monthly checks. I've used 30 of them. So we've got, 30 monthly. Oh, that's for this one where I said every 10 minutes, right? So if we all go crazy and say 14 locations every minute, we're going to blow through these 95,000 checks. So pick 1 or 2 locations from the list. I will say San Francisco and Portland, and then not too often, like once a day or once an hour maybe, so we don't use up our allotment. But in real life, right, you would buy as many checks as you need, and then you'd be able to check your site as frequently as you needed to. And then option 5 is how would you like to be notified if the script fails? And this uses our new alerts. So if you've already got an alert policy and you want to add this synthetics monitor to the policy, you can click add to an existing policy, and somebody's been doing alerts training, so they've had people creating policies on this account. If you want to just go super simple and say, look, I just want to get an email, I don't want to have to go through all that policy stuff, we will do all that for you. Give us an email address and what do you want to call your policy, and we'll create that behind the scenes. For today, we are mostly just concerned with writing the script, so we don't really need to be notified for our sample. Okay, so before I go on to write the script, let me add these 2 customers. Can we switch away from my screen for a sec? Thank you. Even though everybody could go into account settings and see these, I'm gonna not make it that easy on you. Chandler, I assume that's one word, no space in your name. Okay. Okay, you've been added. You should get an email in a moment. And Thomas. You've been added as well, Thomas. Okay. So yeah, check those email accounts. You should get one in momentarily that says click here to choose a password, and then you'll be good to go. Okay, back to my screen. Thank you. Okay, so where was I? Scripted browser. Phil Weber, Portland and San Francisco, and I'll do once a day. All right, so after you fill in these parameters and say write your script, we take you to the next screen, our script editor. And I'll zoom in a little, make that easier to read. We pre-populate it with a sample script to kind of illustrate what you can do and how it works. And there's a link to our documentation there. That's one of the places you can go for more information. docs.newrelic.com, scripting monitors, writing scripted browsers. So there's a very exhaustive set of documents that describe these objects and what methods and properties they have. But using the sample here just to see what's happening, there is a $browser object that actually represents the instance of the browser that you are automating. And this is Selenium WebDriver with the JavaScript bindings. So the first thing you'll want to do probably is retrieve a page. We're sending a GET request to that URL. And then I mentioned that things without our intervention would happen asynchronously. Oh, question, yes, sir. Oh yeah, so that is importing a Node.js module. So here we are requiring the assert module, and we are assigning that. It's like declaring a library. Yes. Yeah, and then we're using it down here. So as our script executes, we can sort of do error checking and say, when I check the text of the H1 element, I'm asserting that it will equal example domain, and if it doesn't, the script will fail. And that's a good point that you bring up. Let me go over to the docs. We don't allow you to use just any Node module. Because this is a pre-built, is it a Docker container? A pre-built virtual image. There's a set of Node modules that are pre-installed on there. So if you go to our docs and you search for import Node.js modules, which is under synthetics, New Relic synthetic scripting monitors, here's a list of the modules that are available to you. So there's a bunch of third-party ones, and these are all links to the documentation on those modules. And then there's a list of Node.js core modules, such as assert. So one question that often comes up, we're about to log into newrelic.com. I'm going to write a script that visits our login page and provides some credentials. And people often ask, I don't want to put my credentials in the script, right? It's my password. What if somebody sees it? So one option that you have is to use that crypto module, for example. And there's a third-party crypto one up top, crypto.js up here. So you got a couple of crypto modules. You can encrypt your password offline, outside of the script, and then in the script, you're going to decrypt it before you send it up to the login page. So it's the user looking at the script could still see your decryption key and the hash and all that, but it's going to slow them down at least. It's not in plain text on the page. I've heard rumors that we're looking at a better way to store that kind of stuff outside the script. So stay tuned. Yeah. Are we adding more? I'm just going to repeat that answer for those in the back who might not have heard. So this gentleman said, is there a reason we're limiting it to just the modules here? And what if we want to use one that's not on the list? So this is Rolf. What's your title? Are you a product manager or a director of engineering for synthetics? So if you have complaints, he's your guy. Or compliments, or if you think it's a great product, you can tell him. But he said, yeah, these are Docker images, and so you don't want them to get too big, right? We're spinning up 14,000 customers, Lou said we have. So potentially lots and lots of instances, and so we want them to be as compact as possible. But if there's a module you really need, let us know through your account exec or through tech support, and if we get enough requests for it, it can be added. I like to use Faker. I'm doing a lot of generating traffic against a website for training purposes, and I don't want it to always say Google Chrome on Linux. I would like it to look like different kinds of browsers are hitting my site. So Faker will generate different user agents at random. And in my script, I say, pretend you're IE, pretend you're Safari, and then my data looks like real browsers hitting my site. Okay, so back to the sample script. This is getting a page. Then we use this feature of, I don't know if it's of JavaScript or of Selenium, called a promise, which basically says, this function after the then, I promise that that will get executed at some point in the future after the previous statement completes. And it kind of goes into a queue and says, all right, finish the thing before, pass the result of that, which is this promise object, to the next JavaScript function, and then it's going to find an element on the page. Then we're using another object called the driver, the web driver object, which allows us to select items using various methods. Here we're looking for the H1 element, and then another then. After we find the H1, then execute the next function, which gets the text, and then, so this is how you do things sequentially, then compare the text with this string example domain, and if they don't match, we throw an exception and the script fails. This is an actual site. Example.com really exists. It really has an H1 that says example domain. So once we've written our script, you can click the validate button. We're going to write one that's more interesting than this in a minute. And here it spins up our virtual machine or our Docker instance. And this is, so I used to, when I taught this, I'd say pick one city. Pick San Francisco, pick Portland. But the trouble is, if we all pick the same city, then our request to validate waits in line, and if there's only one, it can take a while. So if you pick a couple, it may increase our chances of getting our machine running. Yep. Well, let's talk about it. Okay, so I just clicked validate and it ran the script and it succeeded. The green check mark says it ran successfully, no errors. Synthetics captures a screenshot of what the browser looked like at the end of the script. So that's what the page looks like. If you go to example.com, that's what you'll find. Okay, so you see H1 says example domain, but if I change my assert to say, I think that the page title should be Phil is awesome, and then run it, it's going to tell me Phil is not awesome. Hopefully this won't take too long. I should have picked like London or some city that, a Docker instance, yeah. No, not currently. Pretty much you type it in the text area and when you save it, it's live. So if you wanted to do any kind of versioning or revision history, you'd have to do that offline and then just get the most current version and put it in here. And I think that's another feature that we've talked about. Yeah, so it is possible to create this monitor, all the steps that I just went through with the name and the locations and then the script programmatically with an API. So you could say, every time somebody checks a script into a repository, I want to get the most recent version and then programmatically create it over here. Exactly. Yep. Okay, so here this did not match because I asserted that it would equal Phil is awesome. So there's my error. H1 title did not match. Here's what it actually said. And then down below, I get a little log of my error. So the assertion error is page H1 title did not match, and it shows the stack trace of where that failure happened. Okay, so that's our sample script. Let's do one that's more interesting. So I'm going to come in here. I'll get rid of the comment just to give us some more space to work with. I'll keep the assert. But I'll stop there. Okay, browser is going to get a page. Now, whenever I write code in any language, this is just a crutch of mine. I always like to sort of sketch it out using comments as like pseudocode to say, oh, here's what I want this script to do. It helps me to break it down into manageable bite-sized pieces. So I want to navigate to New Relic login page. Then I want to locate the email field. Our login page asks for your email address and your password. I want to locate the email field and populate it. Then I want to locate the password field and populate it. And finally, I want to locate the submit button and click it. Okay, that'll log us in. Then after we're logged in, we'll do something else. So step one is navigate to the login page, and that our New Relic login page is https://login.newrelic.com. Gotta spell it right. Come on. /login. This editor used to yell at me if I didn't put a semicolon at the end of the line, but apparently they're optional now. I just think that's wrong. JavaScript should have semicolons. Okay. So that's going to take us to our login page. The next step then is we want to find that email field so we get a reference to it in our code and we can put our username in there. So let's see, I'm already logged in this browser. So let me open another browser that I'm not logged in on. Go to Firefox. I need to autocorrect New Relic. I always spell that wrong. Okay, so here's our login form. We want to find that email field so that we can type our email address in there. Here's my favorite trick, and you may know this already. Modern browsers, I think all the ones I use have it. Chrome has it, Firefox has it, IE has it, and Safari has it. I don't use Opera, so I don't know if it does. They all have developer tools, right? So I can, if I want to get some information about that field on the page, I can right-click and choose Inspect Element. This is Firefox. I think Chrome just says Inspect. And it'll bring up this little window with my source code, the HTML of the page, and here is the element for that email field. And in fact, I think if I hover over that input tag, it highlights it, shows me, yes, that in fact is what I'm looking at. So I want to know, how can I, in my code, select this field? Well, it's an input type element. It has an ID of login_email. It has a name of login square bracket email. And there may be some other, that's about it. There's no classes or anything that I could use. So I'd have to use either the input tag or the ID or the name. Okay, so those are my options for identifying it. Now, if I go back to my code, I'm going to say browser. And notice that as I type, the editor is helping me. It gives me some information about what that browser object is. When I hit period, it'll bring up a list of the methods that are available to me on that browser object. And one of them is find element. I can find a single element or I can find a collection of elements. In this case, I just want to find one. And then when I hit open parens, it gives me a few options. I want the $driver locator. I'm going to use that WebDriver object to find the thing. So $driver, inside the parentheses, dot, there's a method called by, and sometimes if you want to save yourself a little typing, some people will save that in a variable up here. You can say var or var by equals driver dot by, and now you don't have to type driver every time, you just say by. So down here you can say by dot by what? How do I want to find this thing? I can find it by class name. If my element had a CSS class, I could use the class name to find it. I could use any CSS selector. So if you already speak CSS, if you had a way to find that element so you could style it, you could use that same selector to get a reference to it here. Or if it's got a unique ID, you could use that. If you want to find a link, you can use the link text or the partial link text or the name attribute, or write a JavaScript function that finds it. If you say by.js, then it'll execute your code to locate it. In our case, anyone have a preference or a guess as to the most efficient way to identify this thing? The ID, it's got a unique ID. So if your element has a unique ID, that will always be the most efficient way to do it, because it translates to JavaScript, get element by ID, and it's just going to find it. So our ID is login_email. So let's do that. By ID, login_email, single or double quotes are fine. Okay, so that should return a reference to our email field, and then I can just chain another statement on here and say, what do I want to do with it? I want to send some keys. I want to type into that text box. So send keys. I'm going to use the login learn@newrelic.com. If you'd like to log into your account, feel free to put your own email. Well, you may not want to because everybody can see your script. So use this one. Now, I think technically I don't have to use then. I think if you do a get, it should wait until the get is done before it moves on to the next one. Does it? Or is it going to try to move on before the page is fetched? After the get. Okay, he says I don't have to, but I should. So I was reading the docs on Selenium, and I think they said that unless you're going to interact with the element that you retrieve, you don't necessarily have to use then, but it's a good practice to get into, right? Okay, so I'm going to put a then statement on here. Another thing I sometimes like to do is whenever I put a dot, I move it to the next line and I indent. So I'm going to say dot then on the next line. Function, this is then takes a JavaScript function as a parameter. I'll just do that one. And then that code that we just wrote goes in here. So this says navigate to the page. When that's done, then execute this block of code, which is going to find the element, the login email, and send our email address. And just because I'm obsessive, I'm going to put semicolons. But they're not necessary. Okay, now we could keep going, but just to prove that it works, let me validate. Let's try it. So this should bring up the login page, populate the email field, and then in my screenshot down below, I should be able to see that it worked. Green check mark, login page, look at that. And there's my email in the field. So it really does work. Are you all typing? I can give you a minute to catch up. Yes? It's Selenium WebDriver with the JavaScript bindings, and we've customized it with at least one function that I know of, wait for and find element. Is that the only one? Oh, okay. So we've extended it a little bit for our own internal purposes, but essentially it's Selenium and JavaScript. Yeah. Okay. Oh, another question. Do you mind going back and helping him? He needs some assistance. Okay, yeah, Roth is on his way. Okay, so given this information, you should be able to figure out how to find the password field and type the password. I'll need to tell you what it is. Password is the highly secure ABCD1234 hash. Okay, so go ahead and see if you can locate the password field and type the password in it. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll move on. You could probably even do the button. You guys are smart. But we'll wait a couple minutes. While you're doing that, I'm going to look up another account here. All right. Sorry, you were just joining us here, kind of in the middle. Oh, that's all right. We're in, I don't know if you got an email inviting you to the NRU training account. We're in the NRU training, creating a synthetic scripted browser monitor. So how did you do here? Anybody get this figured out? We had already found the email field and put our email address in there. Now we want to find the password field and put our password in there. So remember the technique to find a field on the page. You can go to another browser window and right-click on the element that you want and say inspect. Okay, so there's our password field, and it also conveniently has a unique ID called login_password. So I'm going to go back to my script and change that ID from login email to login password. And then there's my password to type in. So if you test it, I'm not going to do it, but if you run validate, you should then, at the end of the run, it should give you a green check mark, and you would see both fields populated. Your email in the top one, the password would be dots in the bottom one, but there'd be some characters there. And then step 3 is to find the login or the submit button. So I'm just going to copy this block of code, paste, put my comment in the right place. Okay, and one more time, how do we find the button? Here's the button sign in. If I right-click inspect, there's the button, and once again, it has an ID. So what are you learning? If you have control over your HTML code, it's a good idea to give elements unique IDs. It makes it way easier to find them if you've got a unique ID for each element. If you do not, however, I could say, I want to find an input with a value of sign in, for example. Or I could say an input with a type attribute of submit, right? You can use a CSS selector. If you could find it with CSS, you can use the same technique to find it here. But ID is the simplest and the most efficient. So login_submit is our button. And instead of send keys, we're not going to type to the button. What do you think I want to do? Click, exactly. If I had a t-shirt cannon, I'd shoot you one. Good job. Okay, so I'm going to run this one now, and it should log me in, and I'll see where it goes next. I think it's going to take me to my list of applications in APM. So frequently when I do synthetics training, people say, why don't you just have a recorder? You should have a recorder where I can do what I want to do in the browser. There used to be, I don't know if they fixed it, there is a thing called SE Builder, an open source project that is not a New Relic thing, that worked in Firefox. And then one of our engineers wrote like a translator that would take the SE Builder output and convert it into our language. Then Firefox upgraded and it broke Builder. Do you know if they ever fixed it? They did fix it? Okay, so that's one option. I don't like the code that it generates, though. It's very verbose. I find it hard to read. I'd rather write it myself. But that is an option. There's SE Builder. You can run it in Firefox and do what you want to do on the page, and it'll generate a script. And then on GitHub, one of our guys, Seth Schwartzman, wrote a translator that converts it. And again, on our never-ending product roadmap, that's a frequently requested feature, so send your bribes to Ralph. Okay, so green check mark. It should have logged me in, and sure enough, if you look at my screenshot, I am now logged into the NRU training account, and it has taken me to my list of applications. So now what I want to do next, I'm writing a script to monitor the New Relic login flow to make sure that I'm able to log in and select an application from the list. So I want to find New Relic Pet Clinic, that first item, and click it. And then it should take me to my dashboard where I can see my application performance. Did everybody get this far? Is this all working for everybody? Enter your email, enter your password, click the button. Any questions about that? No? Good, because we got 7.5 minutes. So now what I could do the same sort of process here. I've logged in. I could say then find something on the page that I want to click. But I'm going to shift gears a little bit here, and instead of saying then find element, I'm going to say that's the end of my first task. Fill in the login page and log me into my account. The next sort of discrete task that I want to do is wait for application list to load and then find New Relic Pet Clinic and click it. Okay, so instead of chaining another then statement here, I'm going to say, all right, we're done, we're logged in. Now I want to pause here and wait until my dashboard or my list of applications has loaded. So how do we do that? We're going to go $browser, and we'll get that URL. Oh, the screenshot doesn't have the URL, so let me load it up in my other browser. That was learn at, I'm going to change this password like right after this session, so don't try to hack me. ABCD1234. Okay. Oh, interesting. That's not the URL that I expected to see. Is that all it says for all you guys? rpmneuralink.com/applications? I thought it would say accounts / my account number. They've shortened it. Okay, well, let's just go there. All right. So after I've logged in, I'm going to do another browser get, and I'm going to get that URL that just surprised me. Okay, take me to my applications page. Now I want to pause after this get and make sure that it's fully populated, fully loaded before I try to click on my application name. So I'm going to say, next line, then function put some white space down here just so I can scroll that up. There you go. Here we're going to use our custom function that we added to Selenium, browser dot wait for and find element. You can do a browser dot wait, and whatever JavaScript you put in there will execute in a loop until it returns true. You can do find element, but wait for and find element gives you you provide the selector like by.id or by.css, and then a timeout period, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, however long you want to wait, and this will loop, basically trying to find the element for however long the timeout period is, and fail if it doesn't find it within that period of time. So first I need to know what element am I looking for? How do I know that my page has finished loading? So here's the page, and I'm going to inspect again. I'll look at maybe the header of this grid here and inspect. And I want to look at the structure of the page and say, what element do I want to wait for on the page to tell me that it is available and ready for me to click on something? I like this agent summary table. So this is a table element with a class of agent underscore summary underscore table. When that thing is there on the page, that means my list of applications has loaded. So there's no ID on that table. I can't use my by ID trick. So I could either do by CSS, that would be table dot agent summary table, right? It's the table with the class name of that. Or I could do by dot class. Let me do that. By class, agent summary table. So that's what I want to find. By dot class. I want to find an element with a CSS class of agent summary table, and comma. Is class not correct? Class name. Thank you. This is why you should always use autocomplete. How long do I want to wait? I'll give it 10 seconds. Here you got a little bit of trial. These are milliseconds, 10,000 milliseconds. Got a little trial and error to see how long it should be. But you might say, well, that's my SLA. If this page doesn't load within 10 seconds, I want it to fail. I want to get notified, right? So you could use the timeout here as a way to ensure that your site is performing at a certain level. What if you wanted to set a timeout on the initial login page? I think by default, we wait 30 seconds. Sorry, Ralph, question. Is 30 seconds the default wait time for a get? Oh, okay. Well, and there's some default wait period for a get. We had a little timeout. But you can specify that using, and sorry, I'm going to go doc hunting again. So here's the reference, the scripted browser reference. Here it is, and under runtime environment, maybe I went too far. There's a default timeout. I'm just trying to find the name of the property. Ah, here it is. Yeah, browser, manage, timeouts, page load timeout. There it is. So this setting, browser.manage.timeouts.pageloadTimeout, sets the default timeout for the entire script, right? We're spinning up a new browser instance, and you could say, if any of my pages doesn't respond within 5 seconds or whatever timeout you specify, then my script should fail, and I want to get notified. So yes. It actually does. So the question is, if your site is temporarily down when the script runs, let's say we're monitoring from 5 cities, 5 locations every 15 minutes, right? And from London, all of a sudden, you try to hit it and the site or the script fails for some reason. Anytime a monitor fails, we will automatically try again 2 more times from the same city immediately. We don't wait 15 minutes. We try again as soon as, right after it's failed. So we try to hit the site, 3 times. Try to hit it from London, it fails, so we spin up another one and try again. After the 3rd failure, then we would trigger an incident saying the monitor has failed. And also, I'm going to talk more about this tomorrow in my session on multi-product, shameless plug, multi-product troubleshooting. Now that we have NRQL alerts, you could get tricky with, instead of having synthetics alert you, you could write an alert in with a NRQL query that says if the number of synthetic what's it called? It's not a request, it's a synthetic check. Thank you. Number of synthetic checks faceted by location that fails is greater than 2, for example, right? So I don't want to get alerted if one of them fails. I only want to get alerted if 2 or more fail. You could do that with a NRQL query. Come to my talk tomorrow. I'll show you how to do that. Yes, sir. No, just one. The other 2 attempts don't count against your number of runs, first of all. So if you've bought 100,000 checks, the retries don't count. And then it only counts it as 1 failure after the 3rd time. So it's not going to be 3 failures. What was it? Oh, if any one of them works, then it proceeds. Right, yeah. Okay, so I got to move along. I'm out of time. I was going to say almost out of time. Okay, so we figured out we wanted the class name agent summary table. We're going to wait up to 10 seconds. And then once that is loaded, let me put my function in here. I'm going to click on that Pet Clinic app. So I want to browser find element. This time I'm going to do it by link text because the name of my application has no ID. It has no way to uniquely identify a particular instance. So I've got to find it by the text of the link, which is new relic pet, not per, pet clinic. There's also partial link text if I wanted to look for a substring, and then click it. Okay, so I'm going to run this. Let's see if it works. That comment goes somewhere else, but we'll just get rid of it. Okay, so it should log me in and then wait for that table to load and then click on the Pet Clinic app. And what I should see in the screenshot then is I've clicked on this and it'll show me the dashboard with the chart for that application. Let's see. Suspense. We all want to hear Nate Silver tell us what happened with the election. Okay. Well, I got a green check mark. Oh, and it took the screenshot before the charts had loaded, but I'm on the right page. It did click me through. So if I really wanted to wait, somebody asked this in our discussion forum. They're like, I'm running this script, but in the screenshot, it doesn't show the thing that I expect to see. And it's like, well, it could be grabbing the screenshot before the page is fully loaded. I could add another wait here. Wait until something only appears on the page when it's done. Wait till that's there, and then end, for example. Okay, so quickly, where can you go for more information? I mentioned the documentation, docs.newrelic.com. There's information on all of these browsers. There's examples, scripted browser examples, which is where I kind of took the material for this talk. And we also have, if you go to forums up here, discuss.newrelic.com. We've got our community forum, and there is a section on synthetics with a subsection called synthetics scripts. So if you're trying to figure out how to do this stuff, you can, and you can't figure it out, you can come post a question here. Also, people have posted examples of scripts that they've written that they claim work, so you can kind of get some ideas here. And that's it for me. So I'll hang around if you have questions, but I'm going to dismiss everybody else. Oh, I'll be here, but I want to let everybody else go. Thank you very much. Have a nice break, and we'll see you downstairs.